All right, this is a 184 voice, 10 minutes. I am plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Jackson.
I am the witness.
I am the court.
I am for defense, Mr. Carson.
Starts with question by me, plaintiff's attorney. Ready? Mr. Gonzalez, why was it that you left the car at the College of the Redwoods? Do you recall?
I was advised to do that.
By who?
By Officer, I think it was Officer Neer.
And did he tell you the reason for that?
I'm going to object to what he told him. Hearsay.
I just asked him.
He can state his reason. But not what somebody told him.
The question at this time is, did he tell you the reason?
He had a reason. I don't remember what it was. There was a lot of talking among them that I didn't hear.
Okay. At any rate, this wasn't some arrangement that you had made with Mr. Martins or Mr. Pinson, was it?
No.
All right. In that June 2nd the June 2nd transcript, sir, that Mr. Martins was reading to you from, I believe he had you read from from line 21 on page 1 through line 14 on page 2. Would you please read through line 7 on page 2? Would you read line 7 through line 4 to me?
Line 7 through what?
Line 14.
Page 2, counsel?
That's correct. Now, that was your testimony at that time, was it?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would object. A prior inconsistent statement.
That's correct, Your Honor. I offered to read that statement, Mr. Carson having read the first 7 lines to impeach Mr. Gonzalez.
That's just what he said here today. I'll withdraw the objection. Go ahead and read it.
Thank you. Mr. Carson was asking you questions regarding a discussion you had with Mr. Martins about narcotics, was he not? And he said on line 3, question, who were those people? Answer, Mr. Wallace Martin. Question, okay, what date would that have been? Answer, what state? Question, what date? You first met him on the night of the 15th, according to your earlier testimony. Answer, the 15th, maybe the 16th. Question, in other words, where did the conversation first come up? Answer, he was the one that did the talking. There was no promises made. He's the one that talked about drugs. I never told him anything about it. He's the one. Was that your testimony at that hearing?
Yes.
That was in answer to questions by Mr. Carson?
I beg your pardon?
Now, those were in answers to questions by Mr. Carson.
Yes.
What did you mean at the grand jury, Mr. Gonzalez?
I'm going to object. The question calls for hearsay, what he meant. The words are there.
It's not hearsay, Your Honor. That's the witness's state of mind. I'd say that's an exception.
It's a state of mind outside the courtroom.
This is in response to a question that has developed from Mr. Carson's inconsistent statements.
Yes, Your Honor.
He has a right to explain a statement which is offered as an inconsistent statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. You testified, I believe, a few moments ago that at the grand jury proceedings in regard to a conversation between Mr. Martins and the fellow whose name you heard was Leo. I have some business down here. Would you take care of it? And do you recall the question by Mr. Carson?
Yes.
And then you testified here a few moments ago what Mr. Martins in fact said on the phone, the exact words. Did he use the word heavy, Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, he did.
Now, what did you mean by the word business when you testified before the grand jury?
When you're using the word heavy, you can't assume that it's...
Wait, Your Honor. I'm going to object. That's clearly an objectionable question. He's asking not what he had in his mind, but what he presumed that Mr. Martins meant by something. He can say what the words were, but he can't give his impression of what his reasons or what he really meant underneath it. That's not proper. That's for a jury determination, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'll withdraw the question.
All right.
Let me put it this way, Mr. Gonzalez. Did anyone in that grand jury ever ask you what specific words were said to Leo by Mr. Martins during that phone conversation?
I don't think there was, Mr. Jackson. I looked through the transcript to find that, and I didn't find that question.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Gonzalez, were you asked any questions in the grand jury proceedings by anyone, any attorney or anybody, about how much money was involved in this alleged contract?
I don't think they did, no.
Did you tell the grand jury whether or not you were to be paid for this deal?
I explained to the grand jury everything that they asked me, but you must understand there was a lot of questions asked at the grand jury and a lot of questions being asked here, and my mind is not very clear right now, and I can't remember some of the things.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that that be stricken as non-responsive and that he answer the question.
That's his response to the question, Your Honor. He indicated that he was not asked that specific question. Period. Period. That's fine.
All right, the statement from Beyond the Witness's statement that he was asked in that specific question, the remainder of the answer will be stricken and the jury will be instructed to disregard it.
All right, fine. Thank you. Were you asked many questions in the grand jury regarding money?
Not many, no.
Did Mr. Martins actually use the name Leo when he was on the phone with the person he said was from Oregon?
Yes, he mentioned the name Leo.
And prior to that time, he had told you that he didn't want you to do the job?
Yes.
Did he tell you why?
He said I hadn't given results.
What else did he tell you about that, if anything?
That he wasn't going to come off with any money and that Mr. Pinson wasn't going to come off with any money.
Then later on in this conversation that you had with Mr. Martins over the phone that was monitored on the 29th, did Mr. Martins ever explain what he meant when he said, "Listen to me, here's $900, take $300 back and I'm going to get you some more money, a couple of $1,000 more." It was all set up and you blew it.
When he got to the motel, he asked about a few things, but I don't remember if he straightened that whole thing out because we were interrupted while we were talking.
Did you know what he was talking about when you were on the phone with him?
No.
Mr. Gonzalez, was Mr. Whalen, your attorney, present with you the whole time you talked to the state agents the first time?
My attention was on the questioning of the officers. I don't remember if he stayed there all the time. He walked out. I would say that he stayed there for my benefit.
Do you remember what you did after that meeting? Did you leave him in his office or did you go with the state agents or what did you do?
I think I left by myself. I think I drove to his office and then after I talked to Mr. Hansen, Mr. Berrien, he said goodnight and they left. Then I did.
You left after the agents did?
Yes.
I see. Now, Mr. Carson aptly pointed out that you didn't discuss the fact that there was $1,500 involved with Mr. Hansen and Mr. Berrien. Is that true?
True.
All right. Did you ever tell any of the state agents about $1,500 being used?
Yes.
Who did you tell, Mr. Gonzalez?
Mr. Jack Neer.
When did you tell him that?
The next day.
Why didn't you tell Mr. Hansen and Mr. Berrien?
Mr. Hansen and Mr. Berrien, I didn't trust them, to be honest with you. Although the attorney was there, I just didn't trust the two officers that I talked with. The relationship wasn't there. I felt uncomfortable and I just couldn't offer the information that I had, the complete information that I had to them. I just went on the surface of the information.
When did you tell Mr. Nair?
I think I told Mr. Neer the whole story when I talked to him. I told him the whole thing.
Was anyone else there then?
Could have been Mr. Leonard was there. It could have been more officers.
What? You had a better relationship with Mr. Nair? Is that it?
Yes, right away. Mr. Leonard talked to me and introduced me to him, and he told me a little bit about him. There was a better relationship, and I could feel it.
And you had worked with Mr. Leonard in the past?
Yes.
All right. Why was it that you hitchhiked up here to Eureka when you came up on the 16th instead of taking the bus?
The bus wouldn't leave until, well, it wouldn't leave. It would be too late if I were to wait for the bus. I think the bus would leave either 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I asked what time it would reach Eureka. And it was later than the hour that I wanted to be over there. I was under the assumption that it was 10 o'clock. Mr. Carson said 2 o'clock.
All right. Did you talk on the phone that day with anybody from the office I work with, the district attorney's office?
like I told Mr. Carson, I don't remember if I talked myself or if it was one of the doctors or the interns there. I'm pretty sure it was someone of authority that made the call and explained to the district attorney. I gave him the phone number. I think that's the way it was.